There was a clip floating around last night on social media with MMA Guru sharing his displeasure in this past weekend's UFC Atlantic City card. And I think Guru's absolutely right here. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. My name is James Lynch. We also had a main event announced over the weekend as well, which I think ties into all this. But let's watch this clip from MMA Guru. Got about 1 million views on Twitter. I'm still going to call it Twitter. It's called X, but I think Twitter sounds so much better. So let's watch this clip here for Guru, and then I'm going to give my thoughts after the fact.
This is this, you know what I'm saying? This all I have in life is MMA, and this is what they're giving us. I don't have nothing else but MMA that makes me happy, and it hasn't made me happy in a year. This is
now, to be fair, I don't know which fight exactly he's referring to, but there was a lot of, not great fights over the weekend. There were some questionable stoppages, and some of this stuff, that's just not the UFC putting the fight cards together. There's bad refereeing. There's all types of different things, but I think it speaks to an overall point of something that I've talked about on this channel before, and that is the UFC is just doing too many events. Ever since the ESPN deal came in, they're all about content. Doesn't matter if people aren't going to watch. We'll find people that are going to tune in every weekend, and they have, and that's why they continue to put on these events. And I'll show you some of the comments on this clip after, because they're certainly very interesting. I think speaks to a lot of MMA fans these days, but he's right. I'm not going to sit here and say this last year has made things tough, but I definitely have changed my viewing habits when it comes to watching UFC events, because I just can't sit around for 5-6 hours when I got 2 kids. I got other stuff going on. I mean, this past weekend, for example, I didn't watch the card live. I PVR'd it. I watched most of it the day of, and then I watched the rest of it Sunday morning. Like, I'm going to make MMA work around my schedule, but to sit there and commit 5-6 hours and watch everything bit after bit after bit, that's a lot to commit to. I know some people also say, oh, well, you're doing that with Sunday football and all this stuff. I don't know. I think there's a lot of people as well who aren't doing that, or who are more so watching the highlights. I think a lot of people don't have the patience to sit and watch this much MMA. And again, Guru's kind of put all his eggs in one basket, covering MMA and having a channel where he's sort of known for doing live streams. So, I mean, he doesn't really have a choice. So, I mean, he's got a lot worse than the rest of us. And I got to give him, Lucas Tracy, MMA Joey, all these guys that actually live stream every weekend. Like, that's tough. And then for Guru especially, he's in the UK, so he's up at, like, I don't know, in the middle of the night watching these cards. Like, I'm complaining and it's on, like, I'm on the same time zone as Vegas, but even for me, like, I got too much going on outside of this. So that's I think something very important. And I've done videos on this. I did a whole video on this channel about MMA burnout. You can find it on my channel as well, but I really do think it's something that a lot of fans do experience at some point, because when the fights aren't that good, it really makes it tough to dedicate that 5-6 hours to watching an event and putting the time in. So I think Guru is absolutely spot on this. And this ties into something that I had in the thumbnail. And so people don't accuse me of clickbait. The reason I put the thumbnail together with Guru is because I think it speaks to something as well, in that the UFC is just, putting out events and not really caring about the quality. This is not a good main event. Derek Lewis and Rodrigo Nascimento, May 11th. Read the replies here. I'm not the only one who doesn't think this is very much main event worthy. How many heavyweight main events are we going to have this year? Which is true. It's been a lot. Nascimento main eventing in 2024. Surprised that's a main event. Main event is crazy. Main event. Winner L main event. I know some people are asking this. What? Like, look, fans will complain at anything, but I'm with the fans on this one. This is not a main event worthy fight. Derek Lewis is coming off, 4 losses in his last 5 fights. He's at the tail end of his career. I know he's entertaining, but I mean, last fight, he wasn't able to put out Almeida, and we saw 5 rounds of just a really bad fight with him and Almeida. Like, why are you putting him in that situation again? He's fighting another young guy, Nascimento, who last time I checked, he's going the distance a lot. Split decision, unanimous decision. Hasn't fought since November. I mean, it's just because they have to put out main events, and this is not a great main event in my opinion, And it is not a disrespect towards either fighter. I just think the UFC's got to be a lot better about this. If they're going to put on as many events as they are, you can't have main events like this. Like, a lot of people are not going to tune in. And like I said, this past weekend wasn't the worst fight night card we've seen. It actually had a good main event with Blanchfield and Fior, but it didn't play out to be the most entertaining thing either. So that's sort of where Guru, I'm with them here, where it's like the quality is just, it's not what it used to be. And, when I started watching MMA, they would do a pay-per-view a month. They do maybe a fight night here and there. There was an anticipation, that build up, but I feel like now, because they're doing so many events, you're kind of just catching your breath. Like, we've got UFC 300 in 2 weeks, but we've got a UFC event this weekend. It's like you don't even get that chance to like have that anticipation because so much is going on and they're just stacking these events. And again, for the ESPN, it's like a sausage factory. It's just like content. And as a result, you're just not getting the cards that we used to have. And I've said this before, I think the quality of what it means to get in the UFC and be a UFC fighter has gone down drastically over the years, especially with Contender Series, where, you know, a fighter who might have like 4 fights, wins a contract, and they're in the UFC. And then how many Contender Series fighters are out of the UFC within a year or two because they're just not ready, because the quality is diminished. So again, I think Guru is absolutely spot on. But here's one thing that's a bit concerning, and you know, I understand it, and I'll kind of explain my understanding for this as well. But of course, you get the, well, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Outside of what this fat boy is saying, you don't always have to tune in. I don't have the energy to be up at 4 a.m. every weekend. It wasn't a bad fight card though. You don't have to. The key thing here is you don't always have to tune in. Well, again, Guru does have to tune in because this is he's gone all in with this thing, and he's known for doing live streams. And I just, like, it's tough. Like, I couldn't do it. I honestly could not do what he does every weekend, 4 or 5 hours streaming. Even if I was a single guy, I don't think I'd want to do that for 4 or 5 hours, just because like there's other stuff going on in life. Like, you're missing out on a ton of things if you're dedicating your entire life schedule around watching the UFC. And again, this video is not me complaining about covering MMA. I've found a way to cover MMA where it doesn't burn me out or I hate it or anything like that. I'm not at that point at all. Like I said, I PVR a lot of these cards. The pay-per-views I watch live, some of the bigger events I watch live, the you know, the events that are a little bit better. But why can't you just watch it on your own schedule? You've got all this filler with, you know, commercials and, you know, fighter, like, especially when the fighters are analyzing fights. It's like, I do that for a living. I don't need to hear what someone else is going to say about the main event. I don't really care, you know? So, you know, this guy's saying dude should either get a real job or another hobby. Well, actually, Guru's making a lot of money, man. So again, this guy's just being a hater. You know, this guy kind of being sarcastic again, I guess. I'm actually so dedicated to the sport, I'll stay tweaking in order to watch every card rather than recognize they're actually effing with my head at this point. It's mind-boggling how fluky. Like, he's right. Like, again, this used to be different. You know, so you're going to get sort of a mixed bags here as well, where people are like, don't watch if you don't like it. I don't know. And you know, the pandemic has made things worse. And this is a topic I could go on even further, but like, people live online too much, people. Go outside. There's a whole world out there, you know, like, stuck to a TV screen for that long is not good for your health, not good for your mental health. We see social media getting worse and worse. We see the MMA fans getting worse and worse. This is why people are just glued online all the time, and they're not really experiencing what life is all about, in my opinion. So that's sort of, you know, again, where I see, you know, where I kind of agree with Guru here in what he's talking about, in that the UFC is just not putting on great main events. So and good cards in general. And again, this weekend, again, I'll reiterate this a little bit. Like, on paper, it was not like a terrible event. It just didn't end up being that good, and that's not necessarily the UFC's fault. The problem though is there's too many. Like, we have an event this weekend, then we have 300, which is going to be awesome. But like, I'm telling you guys this before. Like, I'm really curious to see how the UFC is going to put together good cards beyond UFC 300. Like, 300 stacked, we know how great it is. But after that, like, look at 301. That's not a pay-per-view, in my opinion. You've got Alexander Pantoja and Steve Erceg headlining that card. That is not a pay-per-view headliner fight. It's a title fight, yes, but that's not something that people are going to fork out $75 for. There will be people who do it, and there's going to be people who legally stream as well. But I mean, this is your pay-per-view right now. Jonathan Martinez and Aldo. It's great to see Aldo back, but like Joanderson Brito, Jack Shore, Anthony Smith, Petrino, Pereira, Muradov, that's not a pay-per-view. That's just not. And then beyond that, right? Like, what do we have? Luis Natsamento. Barboza Mercy's a fun fight night, but then what's the rest of the card going to look like? I don't know. 302. They don't even have a main event for that yet. And that's in June. It's April today. And we don't have a main event for June because they just don't have a lot of options. Fight night, same thing. Walker Chimaev, great event. That actually might be one of the best fight nights they've done. But again, as a result of making a card like this, all these other cards are going to suffer. Like 303, International Fight Week. That's supposed to be a huge event. What's that going to look like? If Conor can't come back and fight Chandler, who are you going to have headline that card? Like, again, the options are getting smaller and smaller. So, yeah, like I said, like, this video isn't to necessarily hate on the UFC. I just wish they'd value the quality of cards a little bit more. I would love to see them cut back a little bit. I would love to see them focus more on more quality as opposed to quantity. And I think everyone would be happy in the long run. And again, you're going to get better. You're going to get more people tuning in if the fights are quality. Like, imagine if you have a new fan tuning in and you're watching some of the fights that they've been putting on lately. You're going to get fans turning away from that. That's kind of my overall thoughts on it. I just think that, yeah. Like I said, it doesn't help when you get the, oh, well, if you don't like it, don't watch it crowd. Because it's like, That's just too much. It's too much time to watch MMA, in my opinion. That's just mine there. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you agree with Guru? Do you agree with me that they are doing too many events? They're not focusing enough on quality. They're focusing far too on quantity. Again, you do have good cards like 300 and UFC 299, but outside that, you have a lot of events that just don't live up to what it is we're watching. And you know, it's expensive. I mean, it is. People did talk about the cards being free. Like, you have to buy ESPN Plus. Here in Canada, we watch the events on Sportsnet. You got to buy a package to get that. Nothing's cheap there. And then you add in the $80 pay-per-views. It really does add up a lot. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.